This is a classic example of everything on paper should work for me and I should love this record, but I don't know, there's just something about it that isn't very inviting. So anyway, with that little bit of a massage into this record, let's dive in. Stalagmite Steeple from Return to the Earth. So Return to the Earth is they're labeling themselves as a alt-rock, art rock, post-rock group from the UK, and yeah, I can kind of see that. They're kind of in the same vein as like a Gazpacho or an Anathema or Atma, that kind of new prog that's been kind of played with. It's very subdued, very quiet, very gradual, and very like layered in that sense. And for me, who loves a group like Anathema and Gazpacho, there should be something I love about this, you know? And last year's album of Follow the Watcher was one that a lot of people loved and a lot of people really like gravitated to. And for me, I just kind of felt like, it's fine. But I didn't really fall over myself for them. This is their 5th studio record, getting their start with their self-titled work in 2016, then 2018 with The Best Kept Secret, coming into 2019 with Earbus, I believe is how you pronounce it, 2023 with Follow the Watcher, and then following up with the 1-2 punch with Stalagmite Steeples. And it's kind of following the same essence, the same feels that the Follow the Watcher had, where it's very melodramatic. Most of the subject matter deals with loss and grief and not being able to be there for the ones that you love through circumstances that are beyond your control. And how do you deal with that? How do you deal with that when you feel powerless to do or be with, anything? And it's that kind of feeling of the powerlessness. Dealing with some really happy stuff on this one, And in terms of the structure, it's structured extremely well. You got 43 minutes worth of music across 6 tracks that range between 5 to 9 minutes long. And again, this is what I love about progressive rock and why I would consider Return to the Earth to be kind of a crossover retro prog outfit, because they're dealing with longer stretches of music. They're dealing with the build-ups. But I think what stops me from loving these guys is, yes, you're dealing with the build-ups, but we're not getting those payoffs. They're setting themselves up. They're really constructing something beautiful, and it's almost as if you have this plot of land and you have a really beautiful foundation, but there's nothing really on top of it. There's nothing really on top of it to dress it. And I don't think it's the lack of the swelling guitar works, or the mile a minute keyboard work. But I'm trying to really distill what it is about these guys that I've struggled with since listening to The Fall of the Watcher. Because unlike a group like Gazpacho, which has these catchy melodies and these catchy choruses, the same can't be said here. And I'm not saying that every track has to have that banger moment on it, but there has to be some kind of a tangibility to it. There has to be these touchstones that I'm not quite feeling on this record. And when you look at it on paper, right, the first track of Dark Morality, it takes its time to really grow and it builds itself up. And I will admit, you have this really enjoyable Pink Floyd, David Gilmour style of a guitar work near the midpoint that leads it into the end. But I feel like we've been here, done that with a lot of this. I feel as if Porcupine Tree did this 20 years ago with their tracks of like Up the Downstair or The Sky Moves Sideways. Or we've kind of covered this kind of atmosphere thousands of times over with other styles of music very similar to this. And I don't feel as if there's anything particularly exciting added to the mix. Like, take, for example, the shortest track of The Final Time, the second track, where this should be a really good, succinct ballad. And instead, it just kind of wanders the landscape, it wanders the playing field, and I don't feel all that excited about it. I was kind of hoping for something to eventually happen. I was waiting for something succinct to kind of come to the wavefront and bring this track home, and instead it just kind of wanders. Like, at least with Dark Morality of the first track, it builds to something. This one just kind of continues on with where it started and never really moved too far from that starting point. And I think the biggest culprit of this is the longest track, the title track of Stalagmite Steeple, where you have this root of this track that really could work and it really could make something really beautiful. But instead, they just kind of squander it and waste it. Like, they don't build up to anything. They don't bring it out to somewhere. But I really love that piano work that solidifies this track home. You know, it's very simple piano work. There's a couple of notes that, you know, really overlay one another and really turn around with one another, but it never really develops into something more. And at almost 10 minutes, there's a lot of ebb and flow. There's a lot of different movements and moments within this track, but they just kind of feel like whispers or ghosts or shadows of something that could have been, rather than something that is. And I know that's part of the overall concept of this record, but I think the concept kind of got in the way of having a much more enjoyable track for my ears. Then we get to a track like Meaningless to Worth, a 6-minute track where I was just kind of begging for it to do something, you know? Like, it took so long for it to get going, and then once it did, I was like, okay, now what? Like, you got the initial go, you got the initial groove, but I'm craving for something a little bit more. And I hate to kind of beat a dead horse in that, but it never really solidified into something that was exciting for me. Luckily, this 5th track of Die For Me has a little bit more of a get up and go that I appreciate. It is the second longest track at 9 minutes, and it has this kind of build up, but again, it doesn't really have that much of a payoff. And I at least enjoy a little bit of what they're doing within the rhythm sections on here. I love that they're incorporating some more synthesized sounds on there, but again, I was just wishing for it to do something a little bit more. Then we come to the final track of The Raging Sea, and it's just kind of more of the same at this point. I don't know, there was just something that I was hoping for that didn't quite stick the landing. I feel as if this was like a B-side off of some of like Steven Wilson's kind of like singer-songwriter trial and error moments, you know, or some Porcupine Tree stuff from like, I don't know, the Light Bulb Sun era. I don't know, it just didn't hit. It didn't hit for me, and the more I listen to this band, the more I'm thinking, maybe they're just not for me, and that's fine. You know, I can't connect with every single band that's ever been out, and I am seeing a lot of people really connecting with this, and I'm really happy to see that. But, I don't know, for me, it's just more swing and a miss for me. You know, it kind of continued most of my criticisms with The Fall of the Watcher, and it was just more of that. So with that, I think my final rating for this would be Stalagmite Steeple from Return to the Earth is one that I would ultimately skip. And I know that's not for me, right? And that is the album rating that I would give myself for this. You know, I don't know. I would recommend checking it out. Maybe this is for you. I know a lot of people are loving this record, but it's not really for me. When I'm coming to an atmospheric record, I'm hoping for some catchy melodies, some infectious moments, or some really good payoffs, or, you know, just areas where I want to really stay in. But I feel as if this is a little too melodramatic for me to really get into without any catchy hooks or catchy moments or anything along those lines. Like, this is kind of the album that I really don't want to stay seated in because, I don't know. It's kind of working against itself. So that's what I've got for Stalagmite Steeple from Return to the Earth. I'm sure a lot of people aren't going to like my opinion about this album, but that's what I've got. What did you guys think about this record? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Whatever you thought, please let me know by commenting down below. And that's where I'm going to leave it for today. That's where I'm going to leave it. So thank you all so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.